Hello, I'm Patricia Kristof Moy, and I am here with the members of the Alexander String Quartet. And you might see a new face, and I'm going to let them explain why that is. So welcome to all of you. How is everybody?
Great.
We're doing well.
Great.
We're still together.
Hello, everybody in Burlingame and or wherever you might be actually hiding. We are, in fact, right here in San Francisco, sheltering in place at home, as we've been told. And I know I speak for all of us when I say how much we wish we could be there at Kohl Mansion and seeing all of you. But we look forward to being with you and chatting a little bit after the performance. Even if it's virtually.
So we have a new face that I would love to introduce. And actually, David, I'm going to ask you to please introduce yourself.
Yes, great. Hello, everybody. My name is David Samuel, and I am the newest member of the Alexander Quartet, now finally actually present in San Francisco. I am replacing Paul, as much as one could possibly replace Paul. And he is finally able to retire, I think. The 10th of January, we arrived in Los Angeles. We picked up our cat and we drove straight up to San Francisco ever since. And we're thrilled. We're finally at the end of this long road of getting here, and we couldn't be more excited.
You were not here when this recording was made at Kohl Mansion yet. But as you know, the Alexander String Quartet are our beloved, very regular quartet who we bring to Kohl Mansion at least every other season. So we're really looking forward to seeing you live as soon as it's going to be possible. Each of you, just tell us where you are right now, but also where and how you've spent the last 10 months.
Sure. Well, I'm right here, downtown San Francisco. I live with my wife and currently with a loner dog, a beautiful German Shepherd, right here on the top of Nob Hill. So this has been home for 30 years now. I'm very lucky to be safe, have a comfortable place to call home. And I have, as you see in my little studio here, so this room really sucks it up. It's a wonderful, comfortable place. It's where I teach and do all of my Zoom calls from. So the worst thing about it is that I keep having to look at myself in the screen just like this. Only this is getting bigger.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm in my own teaching cave here that I've been teaching from for the past 8 or 9 months. I'm in Daly City. And just like Sandy, I've been teaching and having Zoom classes and calls and meetings. I've been sitting around in my sweatpants and doing what everybody else is doing.
I'm here very close to Stern Grove, next to Stern Grove. In our house, we've been here for 20 years in this house. And my wife and daughter have been home all year. My wife working from one room and me from the other, and my daughter from her bedroom for school. I've been teaching, as the guy said. We've been doing some of our Zoom, I don't know what you call it Zoom, but our Hollywood Squares. I've been painting. I've been practicing a lot of viola, but David's in no danger of losing his job. And I've been watercoloring and writing a book that actually a lot of people at Kohl, a lot of audience members have said, you guys have such amazing stories about being in the quartet all these years. This coming August will be 40 years for Sandy. It's 33 or so for me. Zach is 20, and David now is start piling on. They add up quickly, David, I'm telling you. And most of the stories I can tell. There's a few chapters that are going to be locked in a vault for after we die. Last one goes. And one of the members of the audience at Kohl, who's a physician, gave me a template to start writing and said he would help me edit. I won't say who that is at the moment, but it's going to be badly needed. So that's what I've been doing.
That sounds great. Well, we look forward to reading that book and also to providing it for our audiences. David, you've had an interesting trajectory over the last year. Can you tell us a little bit? You're in San Francisco now, but where have you been?
Yeah, until a week ago, I was living in Auckland, New Zealand. And so it's been a very different year for me, except for about 10 weeks or so of the year where we were really in a strict lockdown in Auckland. The rest of the year has been relatively normal. I had the fortunate opportunity to still be able to perform live but we did have online teaching through much of the year just as a precaution. The best of times, a move overseas like this is quite challenging. And oddly, doing it during a pandemic is more challenging, but it's actually also easier in other ways. For example, the travel part of it, once the schedule was set, everything went very smoothly. The airports are mostly closed, so everything was very quiet. Rental cars were quite easy. And this is a beautiful apartment here in Mission Bay that we've been fortunate to stay in for the time being until we find a permanent spot. And yeah, we're just enjoying being back in the Bay Area now.
We're interested in what your artistic process is and your selection of repertoire. Now, the Alexander String Quartet's been together for many, many years, as long as music at Kohl has been around. And so you've probably played everything.
I was going to say, I can assure you, Patricia, we don't play everything. Not because we wouldn't like to try, but there's just way too much. But of course, the very fascinating thing for us now is that David is joining us, and this will be our first season together with him. There's a lot of stuff. There's very little stuff that the four of us have actually done together. But one of the great things that David brings to the quartet is his extensive knowledge of a great deal of quartet repertoire. A lot of it overlaps with what we already know and have played for many years, but there's some stuff that he's done with his colleagues in the former quartet, the Afiara Quartet, that we don't play, and very probably, I think, will want to learn how to play.
Usually, I mean, in the past, it was me and Paul that kind of figured out repertoire for the quartet on any given season. And that was just kind of out of necessity. At the beginning, when I first joined the quartet, there was a mountain of new repertoire that I had never played before. And with Paul's help, we kind of strategically figured out how to rehearse all of this new material so that I wouldn't get overwhelmed. But as years went by, the two of us kind of just bounced ideas off of each other. A lot of times the repertoire is kind of influenced by presenters that have a particular theme that they're presenting that on a particular season. So they'll ask us if we'll do a particular composer or maybe even a specific work. A lot of times we'll be in the midst of doing a cycle of a particular composer. Like this past year, we were everyone was celebrating Beethoven's 250th. But I mean, all bets are off pretty much with us. We're very open to anything that's out there.
Well, and for instance, this year, as soon as we can, the plan was to start playing all of the Mozart viola quintets and to record them and add them to our complete works of Mozart, complete quartets of Mozart and the late works. And that was going to be a really beautiful way to pass the chair from Paul to David and incorporate everybody. And so that came about, that decision came about rather naturally. And it's really no hardship to play any of this great stuff for our audiences. And so things get into the mix that way too.
It's rather topical right now because, who's ever been in a global pandemic before and tried to play string quartets? We've had some really lovely thoughts and wishes expressed by some presenters as to what they would like us to do when we are able to start and play live concerts again. And some very simple guidelines we heard recently from one was, well, could you maybe do something around the American songbook and perhaps something just around American music? And also, can you do something that's joyful? Can you think about putting some joyful programs together? Because, there's been a lot of despair and apprehension and anxiety and worry in general, just going on for these last almost a year. So that's an interesting and a welcome challenge when people say, look, what could you do with American? What could you do with joyful, And I was just thinking of that, as Fred was saying, that part of our agenda for the next couple of years is to successfully pass the bow from Paul to David. And one of the ways that we're really accomplishing that is to feature all five of us in a lot of programming. Of course, the Mozart viola quintets come to the fore, but one that we also look forward to including is the Dvorak American Quintet, the Opus 97. A really also lovely and joyful piece, both at its inception and in the spirit of actually realizing it and sharing it with live audiences. That's a work that I think we'll be certainly adding into the mix going forward.
I think when Zach joined us, he learned, I'm going to overestimate, Zach will tell me if I'm wrong, but around 40 to 50 works in the first season and a half. And I think he went through 4 metronomes. Just crazy. And that was just tough, especially for a first violinist. And the good thing going into this with David is he's got this background in string quartet playing as well. In fact, the first time we heard David, when he was 3.5 or 4, no, he were 9, I think, 9 or 11, was in a quartet in Guelph, Ontario, a number of years ago when we were playing at a festival for a week or so there. And so we've known him for a while. So he's then made his way all the way to the great Alexander Quartet, which was around for a number of years and was here in San Francisco, played with us many times, recorded with us. Zach produced at least one of their recordings. So David's jumping on a train, but he's been on the train before. And so but I'm going to be very excited, as I was when Zach joined us, to see how the quartet changes and what direction we go in. It's like changing a member of a family. The dynamics will change and the sound will change. It's really like going back to your youth as a quartet. We're not starting from square one, but it's just a different complexion.
Yeah, we can't wait to hear the new sound, of course. What's it like for you joining a quartet that has been playing together and developing its sound for 20, 30, 40 years?
I think in my situation, it's a little bit unique, partly because of what Fred said, and that being that I met, Sandy and Fred and Paul, and at that time, that was when Gafong was first violinist of the Alexander Quartet in Guelph, and this would have been, a long time ago. But they were the first professional string quartet I heard live, and as I've said before, for better or worse, it's formed my aesthetic for string quartet sound and playing. So the whole way through, and then for about 3 years with the Alexander Quartet, we were assistants to the Alexanders and worked with them closely. And as Fred also mentioned, we recorded and played with them. So it's really my whole approach to quartet playing is very much what they do. So I think there's a certain level of comfort that's already there. Yeah, and I know these guys really well and have for a number of years. So there's that element of unknown, which is not present for me because the trust is already there. And that said, I'm super excited because it is really, there's this unknown of what we are going to sound like as a quartet in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and that's going to just change over time. And that's what one of the things that makes quartet playing so great is it's not static at all, and it's always changing and it's always developing. So.
As the senior member of the quartet now, and both in terms of my actual age, but also the fact that I'm the only surviving or remaining, I should say. There are several surviving, but the only remaining founding member of the quartet. There's a great efficiency that we've come to have great faith in, which is the knowledge that when you change one member of the quartet, everything changes. your relationship changes with each other, and you can't say to the new guy, hey, we've been playing this piece since before you were born, and this is how we do it. It doesn't work that way. It's like you bring in a new person, and everything changes. So we're good at that. We don't mistrust it. We don't have unnecessary angst about it. It's something that we really embrace, and we do truly look forward to seeing where we're going to be, a few months from now. It will be a very different place.
The one question that's been burning that I've been asked, which is about the fabulous quartet of instruments that you had made for you.
I will tell you that this maker, Francis Kuttner, has actually made instruments for me and Sandy and Paul. This set of instruments was made in 1987, here in San Francisco. And Francis divides his time between Cremona and San Francisco, which is a rough life, Cremona, Italy. And they were made for our good friend, Fritz Maytag, in memory of his sister, who he used to play quartets with in their family in Newton, Iowa. And so he had the quartet made to memorialize her in a living way, in a way that the instruments could be played. And the idea was to have a quartet play on them. For a while, they went to very gifted students and young professionals and were brought together every year. And then, I don't remember the exact year, but it was shortly after Zach joined, almost 2 decades ago, that we started to play them for that occasion. And then Sandy and I started to play them as our main instruments. And the quartet played them quite a bit. We recorded Beethoven, the Beethoven cycle. The second time we did it, we recorded that in New York with Zach. We have recorded the Bartók quartets on them and Kodály, a number of other things. It's a fantastic set of instruments modeled on a Stradivari design. And they're just beautiful. They're cut from the same trees, same 2 trees. They resonate beautifully together. It's much greater than the sum of its parts. And I also have a Kuttner, and my license plate, my bumper sticker says my other violin's a Kuttner. And it's different. It's very different. Each instrument is different. Francis didn't set out to make a matching set. He just set out to make instruments that were on the same design, but they work beautifully together. There are times when I play my other Kuttner, and there are times perhaps when Sandy will play his other Kuttner, and Zach very often plays his Michael Fisher quite a bit at the time. But they're played a lot as a set, and the audiences get a kick out of it when they see them together. They say, your instruments look like they match. If they haven't read the program, I say, you're right on. It's a good observation.
So the viola and all of the instruments of the quartet, of this Kuttner quartet, travel together, stay together as a set, and whoever is playing in the quartet plays those.
Yeah, they have very generously stayed with us on sort of permanent loan for the time being for almost 2 decades now.
It's great.
And by the way, they are collectively known as the Ellen M.
Yes.
Egger Quartet of Instruments. Ellen was Fritz's sister, and so they're named for her. That's how they're known. And actually, before we were first introduced to them, they had been played by the Angeles Quartet, by the Franciscan Quartet, by I think even the Turtle Island Quartet had played them, and so they have been in circulation now for more than 30 years. But we are very pleased to be currently the curators and are enjoying the privilege of playing them. And we like to share them, particularly when we're recording, because they have this wonderful quality of just something quite extraordinary, particularly, I think, between the cello and the viola, because the Kuttner cello in the Egger set is a little bit more tenor in resonance, really, and pitching than is my own Kuttner, which is about 6 years older. Mine is more baritone. But the lovely thing is that, when the cello and the viola get very close in register, they really, really blend beautifully, but you never can mistake one for the other. And it gives a wonderful luminescence and also a great transparency at the same time to the quality of the instruments as they sound together.
So as we all have learned to adapt to the new normal and to playing and hearing music in a very different way, what have you learned? What have you enjoyed? What might remain once we're back in live performances? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I have honestly enjoyed having a chance to work on aspects of my own playing that I've had some suggestions about from my dear colleagues for a number of years. And I don't know if I've solved them all, but it's rare in life. Once you get on a treadmill in a string quartet, you're playing, you're traveling, you're home, you're teaching, you're raising your family and everything else nonstop. We've never taken a sabbatical. We do take a couple of months off a year, but we wouldn't survive as a quartet without that. So I've been very happy to be able to do that. And it's been a safe activity, at least for me. I don't know if my family's enjoyed it as much, but to really work on things has been great. And I also listen differently. A lot of the playing we had to do together was through the, not really Zoom medium, because you can't use that, but by listening to a track that one of us would lay down and then very carefully lay down our own tracks on top of that. And it makes you listen in a very different way, because it is our live performance, but not in the usual way. Listening like that and doing multiple tracks that way was an interesting exercise. It's been the same thing for our students. I think in many ways they've listened to themselves in a different way, because they're not listening to themselves in the blend until it's put together. They're listening to themselves and trying to make it blend in an imaginary way. I don't know if that makes any sense. But.
Yeah, even playing live, the few projects that we have been able to do in the last couple months, playing with masks on has been a challenge. Playing, 6 feet apart has been a challenge. Like what Fred has said, with recordings, I think we're also experiencing similar issues when we're playing live in this kind of format, socially distanced. It's difficult. It's not the same kind of immediate response that we would normally get if we're playing right next to each other. I definitely feel like the pleasure of playing with my colleagues a lot more than usual, because we would get together after being apart for 2 or 3 weeks, and that would be for maybe a day or two, and then sit down and record or video a virtual concert, and then we would be apart again for another 2 or 3 weeks. So relishing being together. I'm really looking forward to getting together in this new configuration, even with Paul, when we start rehearsing the quintets, just to be in the same room and hearing each other's sound and responding to each other. I think that's something that we're all kind of yearning to experience again. But yeah, the whole, playing with masks, there would be moments where I'd look up at Sandy and he looked like he was about to pass out. It's a different kind of stamina that you have to develop, and challenges of just breathing and cueing and just doing what you have to do when you play. You have this other obstacle that you have to kind of deal with, and that was something that we definitely had to get used to. So I'm hoping that won't continue for too much longer, because I don't want to see any one of my colleagues falling out of his chair in mid phrase.
So it's not only the fact that there's the oxygen deprivation, but we can't see each other's facial expressions as well, which, we can communicate an awful lot with our body language and so forth, but the affirmation that you're looking for, and especially when we're trying to initiate gestures together and to be simpatico, after these 10 months or more of deprivation, I think that we've been a whole lot more conciliatory, I think, with each other, and we've absolutely relished the opportunities to be in the same room with each other, whether it's just simply or in some cases even Fred's garage, with the door open, just so that we could be in the same place, right? Masks on, but able to work. It's so much better than having to do it through this electronic sort of, creativity. I mean, it was better with Zoom than without, for sure, but it's a poor substitute for the real thing.
We're super excited to hear this concert, and of course to have you back again soon in person. Are there any last words you'd like to say to our Music at Kohl patrons who miss you so much?
Keep the faith. We can't wait to see you, and if we're lucky, we'll be able to give you a hug too at the post. But I'll settle for being in the same room safely, and knowing that we all came through this.
Well, thank you so much to the members of the Alexander String Quartet. It has been such an honor to spend these moments with you, even on Zoom, and we can't wait to hear you.
Thank you, Patricia. We'll
Thanks,
see you very
Patricia.
soon.
Thanks very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.